They thought they buried you, but they didn't know you were a seed. They thought silence meant surrender, but they didn't know silence was the sound of sharpening steel. My dear chosen ones, let's get something clear right now. They are not shocked because you rose. They are shattered because they never believed you could. They spent years mistaking your stillness for weakness, your pauses for endings, your scars for defeat. And now, watching you climb with a ferocity that bends every rule they swore would cage you, they don't know whether to clap or collapse. See, the thing about being chosen is this: your life was never about fitting their categories. You were never built to be digestible, predictable, or safe. The power inside you has always been inconvenient for them, threatening even. That's why they ignored it, mocked it, tried to shrink it. But chosen ones, you don't get rid of fire by denying it exists. You don't erase a storm by pretending the skies are clear. The rise they're witnessing right now, it isn't sudden. It's the aftershock of years you spent carrying dynamite in your bones, waiting for the right strike to set it off. Ask yourself this: why are they so rattled now? It's not because you're winning, it's because you're winning without their permission. It's because you're climbing in a way they can't track, can't predict, can't box in. Like galaxies slingshotting through the cosmos, your momentum isn't following their rules of gravity anymore. You're not supposed to be where you are, and that's what makes your rise so dangerous to them. They measure everything with rulers built to keep people small, and yet here you are, rewriting the scale entirely. Chosen one, let me tell you something they'll never admit. They secretly counted on your silence lasting forever. They got comfortable with the idea that your setbacks were tombstones, that your tears were final chapters. They thought the you who stumbled was the whole story. And now that you're showing them otherwise, they feel betrayed, not by you, but by their own shallow expectations. You flipped the script without announcing it. And now they're sitting in theaters, stunned, realizing the trailer they mocked was never the movie. The real feature film has just begun, and it's rated F for ferocious, fearless, and untouchable. And I know what you're thinking. Why me? Why was I the one who had to carry the weight, the pain, the isolation? Why was I the one chosen to endure the fire? Because my chosen one, only you could. Only you had the resilience to turn survival into strategy, heartbreak into armor, stillness into power. They could not walk your road because they would have folded halfway through. They would have begged for applause, begged for shortcuts, begged for mercy. But you bled in silence, built in shadows, and calibrated yourself into a weapon they never saw coming. Now the question isn't why you. The real question is, who else could it have been? Who else could have taken the betrayal, the doubt, the endless underestimation, and still stood tall enough to terrify the very people who wrote you off? Who else could have transformed rock bottom into a launch pad? No one. That's why you were chosen. That's why your rise feels like an earthquake under their feet. Because you are not climbing their ladder. You're building your own mountain. So buckle in, chosen one. This moment isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about finally understanding that everything you needed was already wired into your DNA from the start. You had it in you all along. And now that it's unleashed, the world is left gasping for explanations, scrambling for excuses, and bracing for impact. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, hits harder than the rise of someone who was underestimated all their life. And to every chosen one watching this, your presence here isn't random. It's proof that you're already climbing, already breaking through limits they swore would cage you. If this message is hitting that fire inside you, then lock in with us. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with the number 99 if you know people can't fathom the level you're rising to right now. Show your support with a super thanks if this journey fuels you, because every gesture strengthens this movement of unstoppable climbers. And now, let's break it down step by step. Believe me, if you are truly chosen, you'll recognize these signs as the very blueprint that's been unfolding in your own life. Only chosen ones carry this kind of force. Ordinary people can't touch it. So, let's get started. Number 1. They tried to measure you with broken rulers, but you were the blueprint they could never decode. They brought yardsticks to measure you, but you were the architect drafting blueprints they could never read. They tried to size you up, but you don't fit inside their tape measure. You were never built to be measured. You were built to be remembered. My dear chosen ones, listen closely. This is where their biggest mistake started. They thought you were just another name to tally, another body to box in, another story to skim. They came with their rulers, their labels, their assumptions, and their recycled opinions, trying to measure you against their tiny little scales. But here's the truth. You were never a specimen. You were the architect, the one holding the blueprint the entire time. They were trying to measure skyscrapers with school rulers, and now they're panicking because the numbers don't add up. Think about it. Why do they keep calling you confusing, too much, or not enough? Why do they insist on labeling you with words that don't fit? It's because your existence threatens their sense of control. People love to believe they've got someone figured out. It makes them feel powerful. But when they can't pin you down, they shrink you into something safer, something that doesn't intimidate them. That's why they dismissed you. Not because you were lacking, but because you were limitless. And limitless terrifies the limited. Chosen one, let me ask you this. Did you really think your silence was wasted? Did you think those nights alone, grinding when nobody cared, carried no weight? Number. Those were the exact moments that forged you. While they were busy laughing at your surface struggles, you were rewiring yourself at the roots. While they were waiting for your collapse, you were studying pain like a textbook, decoding betrayal like a secret language, and teaching yourself strategies no system could prepare you for. That's why today your climb feels impossible to them. It doesn't follow their formula. But why should it? You were never built by their equations. You were always an outlier rewriting the math. They wanted you begging for space in rooms too small for your essence. They wanted you shrinking yourself to fit through their gates. But instead, you built your own. And here's the kicker. You didn't do it out of arrogance. You did it out of necessity. You realized early on that no matter how politely you asked, they would never give you a seat at their table. So you built your own table, your own hall, your own entire arena. And now they're peeking through the windows, realizing the blueprint they ignored became the empire they envy. Chosen one, don't ever forget this. They underestimated you because they were using the wrong tools. They thought your silence meant weakness, your setbacks meant endings, your restraint meant nothingness. But what they missed is that every so-called delay was a recalibration, every rejection was redirection, every pause was preparation. They tried to size you with broken rulers, but rulers can only measure surface. They can't measure resilience. They can't measure fire. They can't measure what was already inside you all along. That's why they're so rattled now. You weren't climbing for applause. You weren't waiting for validation. And you weren't asking for permission. You were evolving in plain sight right under their noses. They thought they were monitoring your limits. But what they didn't know is that you were the one rewriting the grid entirely. They thought you were the project. But no, chosen one, you were the blueprint, and blueprints don't beg to be understood. They dictate what gets built. Number 2, your fire was never gone. It was caged, waiting for the right moment to erupt. Your ferocity isn't new. It was caged, restrained, and silenced in the name of survival. They mistook your silence for surrender, but they didn't know it was the silence of a storm waiting for the right sky to break. Chosen one, let's get this straight. They never met the real you. What they saw was the masked version, the restrained version, The version you had to create just to breathe in spaces too small for your fire. They called you soft, calm, too quiet, too gentle. But that wasn't weakness. That was survival. That was you choosing strategy over spectacle. That was you crouching, calculating, protecting your power from the kind of people who would have crushed it before it had the chance to roar. The truth is, you've always been ferocious. You've always carried that wild heat inside your chest, the kind of force that bends rooms and rewrites rules. But environments not built to handle your magnitude forced you to compress yourself down, to tone down the volume of your essence so it wouldn't get labeled as too much. You weren't quiet because you lacked the words. You were quiet because not everyone deserved to hear your roar. And here's the part they'll never admit. They liked you muted. They liked the version of you that played small because it kept them comfortable. It allowed them to feel big, secure, unchallenged. But chosen one, your silence was never their victory. It was your preparation. While they thought you were still, you were moving 10 steps ahead. While they assumed you were passive, you were learning the codes of survival. You taught yourself how to read a room in one glance. You learned when to strike, when to vanish, and when to bide your time. They were playing checkers, but you were designing your own battlefield in your mind. Now that you're rising, now that your restraint has turned into revelation, they're unsettled. Your confidence disturbs them. Your momentum shakes them. Your refusal to hide terrifies them because they can't figure out how the one they thought was docile is the very one climbing with claws sharper than they've ever seen. What they don't understand is this. You were never the underdog. You were the storm holding itself back. You chose peace when you could have chosen destruction. You conserved your energy while they mistook you for empty. You crouched when you could have crushed. But now you're standing. And when a giant rises, nothing around it looks the same again. Number 3. They played noisy checkers while you were silently designing the battlefield of chess. They were playing checkers while you were engineering a battlefield they'll never survive. They thought you were a pawn. They didn't realize you were the architect of the board itself. Chosen ones, let's call this what it is. The people who undermined you weren't smart opponents. They were noisy amateurs chasing attention, mistaking speed for strategy. They made loud, sloppy moves, bragged about quick wins, and laughed when you stumbled. But while they were busy performing, you were silent, calculating, mapping out an entire battlefield in your mind. They played checkers, predictable, emotional, surface level. You were building something else entirely. You weren't playing their game. You were designing a game so advanced they didn't even realize they were already losing. They looked at your setbacks and assumed you were falling behind. They measured your silence and thought it meant defeat. What they couldn't see was the storm you were constructing in the background. While they were chasing applause, you were gathering data. You studied how they moved, how they lied, how they faked loyalty, how they disguised envy as support. And instead of copying them, you wrote the manual on how not to become them. Every quiet moment they mocked was actually you writing chapters of a strategy book they'll never get to read. That's why they're confused now. They're still reacting to problems you already solved months ago. They're playing yesterday's game while you're moving pieces 3 dimensions ahead. When they laughed at your fall, you were already planning the rise. When they mocked your delay, you were sharpening precision. They wanted drama, but you delivered domination. And the truth is, they can't keep up, not because you're louder, but because you're undeniable. Chosen one, here's the part that stings them the most. You didn't need their permission, their resources, or their networks. You flipped the board without asking for a seat at it. You rose without validation, and that's the one thing they can't forgive. They thought chaos would be your comeback, that you'd fight dirty, that you'd chase vengeance. But instead, you came back calm, disciplined and powerful, and nothing terrifies a pretender more than someone who doesn't need to perform. Understand this. You were never competing with them. You were evolving past them. And now they're stuck in a game they already lost, staring at the reality that the pawn they underestimated turned out to be the master of the board. Number 4. You weren't born to blend in. You were wired to disrupt every outdated pattern. You were never built to blend in. You were designed to blaze through every pattern they swore could contain you. They called you the black sheep, but they didn't realize you were the spark with enough heat to burn their whole script. My dear chosen ones, understand this. Your difference was never a flaw. It was the feature. From the start, you didn't fit in because you weren't meant to. Every time they tried to hand you the script, generation after generation of recycled rules, of silence, of "this is how it's always been," something in you ripped the pages up. You couldn't play along. You couldn't pretend the smiles weren't hiding pain or that obedience wasn't laced with manipulation. And they hated you for it, not because you were wrong, but because you refused to keep the lie alive. That's the burden of the chosen one. You don't just carry your own fight. You end up carrying the weight of cycles that were never supposed to continue. You are the glitch in their program, the interruption they never planned for, the one they call difficult because you refuse to be domesticated by dysfunction. And of course they resist you. People benefiting from a broken system will always attack the one who comes to dismantle it. But chosen one, let me tell you the truth they'll never say out loud. You were never meant to blend. You were engineered to expose. Your glow isn't just light. It's a mirror that forces others to see what they've been avoiding. Your peace isn't just calm. It's proof that their chaos is a choice. And your freedom. It makes their chains look obvious. That's why they call you rebellious, selfish too much. Not because you are, but because your very existence shows them they could have chosen differently and didn't. They can't stand it because your rise feels personal, but it isn't. It's disruptive. You're not just climbing for yourself. You're dragging entire storylines into extinction. Shame, silence, and survival patterns that should have died long before you were born. That's why it's lonely sometimes, because you're not just healing wounds, you're breaking chains. You're not just stepping out, you're pulling whole legacies off repeat. So don't you dare think of yourself as the black sheep ever again. You are not the misfit. You are the match. And the reason the room feels smoky right now is because you've already lit the fire. You weren't made to blend. You were made to blaze. Number 5. You shook hands with darkness and turned survival into unstoppable strength. You made peace with fire, and that's why your calm now scorches them. They threw flames to burn you alive, not realizing you'd learned to dance inside the blaze. My dear chosen ones, this is where their entire playbook crumbled. They thought your breaking point would be the end. They thought betrayal would shut you down, rejection would shrink you, and failure would bury you. What they didn't factor in is that you did the one thing they never had the courage to do. You faced the fire without running. You didn't avoid the storm, you walked straight into it. And when the smoke cleared, you were still standing, carrying a strength that rattles the ground beneath their feet. Chosen ones, most people beg life to keep them comfortable. They pray for shortcuts, for mercy, for easy exits. But you made peace with the chaos. You sat with pain, dissected it, and let it strip away every false version of you. While they were running from discomfort, you were sharpening yourself inside it. That's why you walk with a calm that unnerves them now. It isn't softness, it's earned steel. You didn't stumble into this strength. You forged it in nights when your heart felt like it was caving in, but you refused to collapse. Ask yourself this. Why do they whisper about your past, but never speak of your resilience? Why do they try to reduce you to scars while ignoring the fact that you turned those scars into maps? It's simple. They can't explain how someone they counted out refuses to stay down. People fear what they can't break. And you, chosen one, are unbreakable now. Not because you never suffered, but because you survived everything they swore would end you. You've outlasted betrayals that would have crushed them. You've forgiven people who never apologized. You've walked through ruins and still carried vision in your chest. That's why their confusion is so loud today. They thought they buried you under the ashes, but you walked out holding fire in your bare hands. And here's the twist. They can't intimidate you with storms anymore because you've already lived in the pit. You're not afraid of what's next, because you've already survived what was designed to erase you. That's what terrifies them most. Not just that you survived, but that you rose sharper, calmer, and more dangerous than ever. You don't chase peace anymore, chosen one. You are peace. You don't beg for space. You validate the room by existing in it. And that kind of presence, it doesn't just silence enemies, it scorches them. Number 6. Your very presence exposes that they settled for less, and that truth unsettles them. Your very presence is proof they settled, and that's the wound they can't heal. They don't hate you because you shine. They hate you because your glow exposes the shadows they chose to live in. My dear chosen ones, understand this. Your existence alone is enough to make certain people flinch. You don't have to brag. You don't have to boast. You don't even have to open your mouth. The moment you step into a room, the air shifts because your life is a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. You reflect back everything they could have been if they hadn't traded their potential for comfort. Every boundary you enforce, every level you climb, every ounce of authenticity you live in is a spotlight on their decision to settle. They hate that you chose truth while they clung to safety. They hate that you chose authenticity while they worshipped approval. They hate that you broke patterns while they recycled them like broken records. They settled for a script written by someone else. But you, chosen one, you ripped yours apart and wrote it in your own ink. That's what makes your rise unbearable for them. Not the climb itself, but the reminder that they had the same chance and refused to take it. And here's the cruel part. They'll never admit it. Instead, they'll dress their resentment in phrases you've heard 1,000 times. You've changed. Of course you changed. That was the whole point. You think you're better than us. No, you just know you're not less. You forgot where you came from. Wrong. You remembered who you are. These words aren't critiques. They're confessions. Confessions that your courage terrifies them because it highlights their lack of it. Chosen ones, don't mistake their bitterness for truth. It's camouflage for envy. Because deep down they know the road you're walking is the same road they could have chosen but didn't. They wanted applause before effort, validation before risk, shortcuts instead of sacrifice. You, on the other hand, built in silence, moved without permission, and grew when no one believed in you. That's why your presence makes them uneasy. Because you're living proof that excuses are lies and comfort zones are cages. So when you feel their eyes burning holes into your back, don't shrink, stand taller. Every step you take forward is not just progress, it's exposure. You are the mirror they can't bear to look into. And that, chosen one, is exactly why your rise feels ferocious. Number 7. They mocked your rock bottom, but missed the silent resurrection you engineered there. They froze you at rock bottom, but they missed the blueprint you buried in the rubble. They laughed at your collapse, not knowing the ruins were your workshop. They mocked the ashes, never realizing you were drawing your next empire in the dust. My chosen ones, this is where the story gets brutal. People love to remember you at your lowest. They hold on to that image because it comforts them. Seeing you cracked, broken on your knees, it makes them feel like they were right about you, like you'd never rise beyond what they could control. They replay your losses like highlight reels because your failure was their entertainment. But here's the punchline. What they thought was your burial was actually your construction site. While they saw wreckage, you were laying foundation. While they whispered about your downfall, you were drafting a resurrection plan in silence. They saw tears. They didn't see the redesign. They saw setbacks. They didn't see the strategies carved into your skin. They mistook your silence for surrender, when in reality it was the quiet hum of an engine they couldn't fathom. Chosen one, don't forget this. Your glow today didn't come from luck, applause, or timing. It came from the pit they abandoned you in. It came from the nights when no one checked in, from the moments when the world had written you off, and you still chose to rise. That glow isn't aesthetic, it's earned. It's coded in scars, cemented in endurance, and refined in pain that would have broken the very people who tried to bury you. They can't replicate it because they didn't pay for it. They didn't bleed for it. They didn't lose what you lost. That's why your shine terrifies them. It isn't cosmetic, it's authentic. You've been through collapse and came out carrying blueprints for a future they can't reverse engineer. They'll try to act confused now, as if your climb came out of nowhere. But you and I know the truth. It came from the ruins, from the decision to live when life begged you to fold, from the silence that became your forge, from the rubble they left you in, where you quietly rebuilt yourself into something they can't recognize, let alone compete with. So let them gawk, chosen one. Let them stare wide-eyed, trying to decode what they missed. They'll never find it, because the glow they're staring at isn't built for imitation. It's the signature of a chosen one who turned rock bottom into a launch pad. And here's the truth. Chosen ones, everything they thought would bury you became the very fuel that's propelling you higher than they can fathom. Your rise isn't a coincidence. It's a consequence of the fire you refused to let die. You had it in you all along, and now the world can't look away. Number 8. The strength they feared is the strength you finally stopped hiding. The strength they feared is the strength you finally stopped hiding. Chosen one, let's speak the truth that everyone else is too afraid to say aloud. They were never scared of your weakness. They were terrified of your strength. They weren't intimidated by your struggles. They were intimidated by your potential. And the reason your rise is shaking the ground beneath their feet now is simple. You finally stopped hiding the very power they spent years trying to contain. See, people aren't frightened by what they understand. They're frightened by what they can't control. And you've always carried a force that couldn't be tamed by social norms, family patterns, or the expectations that others tried to suffocate you with. Deep down, you always knew you carried something rare, a resilience that didn't break, a vision that didn't fade, and a fire that didn't die. But for most of your life, you kept that power tucked away, folded neatly behind politeness, humility, or fear of being misunderstood. And let's be real, they liked you better that way. They liked you quiet, contained, predictable. They liked the version of you that didn't shake tables or break patterns. Why? Because it made their world safer. It made their comfort zones feel justified. It allowed them to pretend they were ahead, that they were winning, that they were stronger. But the entire time, chosen one, you weren't hiding because you were weak. You were hiding because you were discerning. You were choosing when to reveal your power and when to preserve it. Your restraint wasn't submission, it was strategy. People love to say you've changed. But the truth is, you didn't change. You just stopped dimming. You stopped shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You stopped apologizing for your intensity, your insight, your wisdom, your vision. You stopped pretending that you were average when everything about you was extraordinary. And now that your power is showing, now that the mask is off, they're scrambling. Because they never prepared for the real you. Let me tell you something they'll never admit. They always sensed what you were capable of, even when you couldn't see it yet. That's why some people sabotaged you. That's why some people withheld support, mocked your dreams, or discouraged your ambition. They saw the spark you didn't know how to name. They felt the storm forming inside you long before you understood it. They recognized your potential and hoped your doubt would bury it. But here you are, rising with a force they can't dismiss anymore. And now, the strength you've stepped into has shattered their illusions. Because it's not loud strength. It's not boastful, aggressive, or arrogant. It's quiet, grounded, unshakable strength. The kind that can't be manipulated or derailed. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that sees through people, through situations, through lies. The kind of strength that makes insecure people reveal their true selves the moment you walk into the room. Chosen one, your strength is not just physical or emotional. It's spiritual. It's ancestral. It's forged from every season that tried to take you out and failed. It's built from nights when you held yourself together, mornings when you rose without applause, and days when you carried burdens that would have crushed the people who criticized you. That silent, unglamorous endurance. That's the strength they never respected, but now fear. Understand this clearly. Once you stop hiding your strength, it becomes impossible for others to hide their insecurity. That's why they react the way they do. That's why some people distance themselves, lash out, gossip, or pretend not to see your growth. They're not avoiding you. They're avoiding the reflection that your power shines onto their unfulfilled selves. You didn't do anything to them. Your strength simply exposes the weakness they refuse to confront. And the most powerful part, you didn't gain strength, you unveiled it. The strength was always yours, always in you. Always waiting for the moment you were done pretending to be smaller than your calling. Now that you've stepped into the fullness of who you are, nothing they say can shrink you, and nothing they do can stop you. Your strength is the revolution you were destined to bring. And now that it's unleashed, the world has no choice but to adjust. Number 9. You outgrew the rooms that were never built to hold your destiny. You outgrew the rooms that were never built to hold your destiny. Chosen one, let's speak this with clarity. You didn't leave people behind. You outgrew environments that were too small for the magnitude of your destiny. Not every room is designed to hold the weight of your purpose. Not every crowd has the capacity to support your expansion. Not every table can withstand the power you bring when you sit down at it. And that's not arrogance. That's alignment. Some of the rooms you outgrew weren't bad rooms. They were just temporary rooms. Rooms built for a previous version of you. Quieter, softer, uncertain, still figuring out your identity. But destiny doesn't allow you to stay in places that no longer feed your evolution. Growth is disruptive. Expansion is uncomfortable. And leaving the familiar often breaks the hearts of the people who expected you to stay small for their comfort. You didn't walk away because you thought you were better than anyone. You walked away because staying would have required you to betray your potential. And chosen one, anyone who expects you to shrink for their convenience never loved you. They loved the version of you that was easy to manage. The truth is, some rooms were designed to limit you from the start. Rooms where your intelligence was mocked because it threatened the insecure. Rooms where your ambition was labeled too much. Rooms where your authenticity was a problem because everyone else preferred masks. Rooms where your questions made people uncomfortable because they challenged systems built on silence. These rooms were not your home. They were your training ground. You may have felt guilty when you outgrew them. That's natural. Because chosen ones are loyal by nature. You wanted to bring people with you. You wanted to share your vision. You wanted everyone to rise together. But destiny has a way of revealing who was meant to walk beside you and who was meant to stay behind. Not everyone is built for elevation. Some people don't want to grow. Some people don't want responsibility. Some people don't want truth. And your rise threatens the stagnation they've settled into. Understand this. Growth exposes comfort. When you started expanding, they felt the walls closing in on their excuses. Your elevation made them confront their lack of effort. Your transformation made them face their fear of change. Your evolution reminded them of the courage they refused to access. That's why they became uncomfortable. And when people can't grow with you, they try to hold you where they met you. But you kept climbing anyway, because destiny doesn't negotiate. You didn't ask to outgrow those rooms. Your spirit demanded it. Your calling demanded it. The new version of you needed air, space, depth, challenge, peace. And some rooms simply couldn't provide that. You needed rooms where your ideas could expand instead of shrink. Rooms where your voice was valued instead of silenced. Rooms where your presence was celebrated, not tolerated. And now that you've stepped into bigger rooms, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, professionally, you can finally see the truth. Staying in those old spaces would have suffocated your future. They weren't bad people, they just weren't your people. Those weren't bad rooms, they just weren't your destination. Your destiny required expansion, and expansion always requires relocation. Be proud of yourself. You didn't lose the room. The room lost the chosen one. Number 10. Your intuition exposed truths their words could never mask. Your intuition exposed truths their words could never mask. Chosen one, your intuition has always been your superpower, the quiet, invisible force guiding you long before you knew how to articulate it. While others relied on appearances, excuses, or empty language, you saw the truth behind people's faces, behavior, and energy. You felt what they tried to hide, and that's precisely why some people feared you. They couldn't lie in your presence. You were never the loudest in the room, but you were always the one who knew. Knew when someone's smile wasn't genuine, knew when support wasn't real, knew when loyalty was conditional, knew when someone's intentions were off. People underestimate intuition because it's silent. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It simply reveals. And your intuition has been revealing more than some people wanted you to see. You didn't learn this ability. You were born with it. It's the consequence of being a chosen one. When you walk with a higher purpose, you're granted heightened perception. You sense shifts before they happen. You feel betrayal brewing before it manifests. You recognize manipulation the moment it enters the room. It's not paranoia, it's perception. And trust me, your intuition made people uncomfortable long before you knew why. They sensed that you could see through them, and it made them uneasy. Because people love performing. They love pretending. They love controlling the narrative about who they are. But your spirit has always been able to pick up on the truth they tried to bury. Pay attention to something. Your intuition didn't just expose their lies. It exposed their fears, their intentions, their envy, their insecurities. It revealed who was genuine and who was simply attached to the weaker version of you. And that's why so many connections fell apart when you started evolving. You didn't push them away. Your intuition peeled back their masks, and you could no longer pretend not to see. Intuition is the language of the soul. And your soul has always warned you long before the situation unfolded. Think about the times you felt uneasy but didn't know why. Think about the times you sensed someone's jealousy without proof. Think about the times you felt distance before betrayal occurred. That wasn't imagination. That was spiritual intelligence. Your intuition is the internal compass that kept you away from harm, even when your heart wanted to believe the best in people. It protected you from false friendships, draining environments, and hidden enemies. It guided you when logic failed. It spoke when no one else did. And you're finally in a season of trusting it fully. And that's what terrifies people the most now, because once you start trusting your intuition, you stop falling for manipulation. You stop giving second chances to people who abused the first. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop engaging with those who drain instead of contribute. You stop believing words and start observing patterns. Intuition doesn't just protect you, it elevates you. because when you can discern the truth behind someone's words, you stop being controlled by their narrative. You start living according to your inner knowing. And that kind of clarity is dangerous to people who relied on your confusion. Your intuition is the reason you outgrew people who thought they would always have access to you. It's the reason your circle got smaller. It's the reason you're rising now. Because intuition leads to alignment, and alignment leads to elevation. They spoke lies. Your intuition heard the truth. And that truth is what set you free. Number 11. Your elevation is the evidence that their expectations were never your limits. Your elevation is the evidence that their expectations were never your limits. Chosen one, your entire rise is living proof that the world's expectations were never capable of defining you. People always saw you through the lens of their own limitations. They projected their fears onto you. They placed ceilings above you that were rooted in their own inability to dream beyond mediocrity. They expected you to stay small because small is all they've ever known. But your elevation, your growth, your transformation, your expansion, is the ultimate testimony that their expectations were irrelevant. You were never created to meet the standards others placed on you. You were created to exceed them, shatter them, outgrow them, and rewrite them entirely. Let's be honest, they expected your setbacks to destroy you. They expected your heartbreaks to break you permanently. They expected your struggles to silence you. They expected your failures to define you. They expected you to crumble under pressure, to stay stuck, to settle, to give up, to choose the easy road instead of the right one. And yet, here you are, rising louder, stronger, sharper, wiser than they ever imagined. Your elevation is the result of internal work they never saw, sacrifices they never acknowledged, and strength they never believed you possessed. While they were watching your surface, they underestimated your depth. While they were counting your losses, they ignored your endurance. While they were laughing at your pain, they didn't notice the power it was building inside you. Your rise is not accidental. It's intentional. It's the consequence of resilience. It's the byproduct of choosing growth over comfort, healing over bitterness, and purpose over approval. People expected you to navigate life based on their limits, but your destiny was written by something higher. Remember this. The expectations others placed on you had nothing to do with your true potential. They were reflections of their own limitations. When people can't see greatness within themselves, they can't recognize it in you. When people have settled, they expect you to settle. When people have given up on their dreams, they expect you to give up on yours. When people lack courage, they resent yours. Your elevation exposes all of that. It reveals how small their vision was. It reveals how wrong their assumptions were. It reveals how limited their imagination was when they thought they had you figured out. And trust me, that revelation is uncomfortable for them. Because your rise proves that the barriers they placed on you were never real. The limits they imagined for you were never yours to begin with. The story they wrote for you wasn't your destiny. It was their projection. Chosen one, understand this deeply. Your elevation is a disruption. It breaks the narratives people created about you. It challenges the identities they assigned you. It shatters the boxes they tried to confine you in. Your rise forces people to confront the fact that they underestimated someone who was chosen, someone who was built differently, someone who wasn't bound by their definitions. And here's the most important part. Your elevation is just beginning. You haven't even reached your peak. You're still unfolding, still rising, still expanding, still transforming. And the further you rise, the more evident it becomes that their expectations were never your destiny. They were simply obstacles you outgrew. Your elevation is the evidence that you were always meant for more. And now the world has no choice but to see what destiny saw in you from the beginning. If this message struck your spirit, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments if you know you're climbing levels beyond their imagination. Share this with another chosen one, because this movement is only getting louder. Number 12. You stopped chasing acceptance, and that's when real power finally found you. Chosen one, let's get one thing clear. Your life didn't change when you became stronger, smarter, or more disciplined. Those things mattered deeply. But your real transformation began the moment you stopped chasing acceptance, the moment you stopped bending yourself into shapes that made others comfortable, the moment you realized that validation was a chain disguised as a compliment. That was the moment everything shifted. Because the truth is, as long as you sought acceptance, you were giving others authority over your worth. And chosen ones were never meant to live under anyone's authority but their own. See, they raised you to believe that approval meant belonging, that being liked meant you were doing something right, that silence meant peace and conformity meant success. They taught you to prioritize harmony even at the cost of your own authenticity. You learned to shrink, to soften, to swallow your truth. But deep down, the fire in you was frustrated. Your spirit was suffocating under the weight of expectations that had nothing to do with your destiny. Chosen one, you spent years trying to earn from people what you were born already possessing: value. But you didn't know that yet. You thought love had to be proven, loyalty had to be purchased, acceptance had to be negotiated. You thought being good was the price for being chosen, but transformation came when you finally saw the truth, that acceptance is a gift manipulators use to control the powerful. And you were powerful long before you knew what to do with it. The moment you stopped chasing acceptance was the moment you stepped into your real identity. Suddenly, you weren't afraid of rejection anymore, because you realized rejection isn't loss. It's direction. You stopped being afraid of people leaving because you saw that anyone who could walk away wasn't meant to stay. You stopped forcing conversations, stopped begging for understanding, stopped trying to prove yourself to people who had already decided not to see you. And once that shift happened, your entire world rearranged itself. Your energy changed. Your standards changed. Your boundaries sharpened. Your intuition strengthened. Your confidence became a force. And guess what happened? People felt it immediately. Because when a chosen one stops needing acceptance, they become unstoppable. Your presence became heavier, clearer, more defined. Not heavy with burden, heavy with truth. Heavy with self-respect. Heavy with purpose. Your aura expanded. Your silence grew louder. Your spirit stopped whispering and started roaring, and those who once manipulated your desire for approval suddenly lost their power over you. That's why some people got uncomfortable when you elevated. Not because you changed, but because you stopped needing them to approve of your change. They had grown addicted to your uncertainty. They had grown comfortable with your people-pleasing. They liked the version of you that apologized for things that weren't your fault. The version of you that overgave, over-explained, over-accommodated. That version of you kept them safe because it kept you small. But when you stopped chasing acceptance, you broke the supply chain. Their control ended. Their influence dissolved. You reclaimed your power. Let's talk about the deeper truth. Acceptance from the wrong people is a cage masquerading as a home. And you lived in that cage far too long. You let society, family, partners, co-workers, and friends define how loud you could be, how bold you could be, how real you could be. You let their comfort dictate your expression. You let their insecurity limit your ambition. But chosen one, destiny does not allow caged wings to stay folded. Eventually, life forces your wings open. And for you, that moment came when you realized this one truth. Being accepted is not the same as being aligned. Acceptance requires conformity. Alignment requires authenticity. Acceptance is conditional. Alignment is spiritual. Acceptance comes with rules. Alignment comes with purpose. When you stopped chasing acceptance, your alignment finally activated. And suddenly, You started meeting people who saw you instead of needing you to explain yourself. You started receiving opportunities that matched your calling instead of your fears. You started stepping into rooms designed for the expanded version of you, not the edited one. You started speaking in your real voice instead of the one designed to keep others calm. Your entire life began to shift upward because you finally made space for a version of you that wasn't filtered, diluted, or controlled. This is why people don't understand your rise now. They keep asking, how did you get here? They think it was luck or timing or chance. But the truth is, your rise began the moment you gave yourself permission to stop seeking acceptance and start standing in your truth. Because when you stop needing acceptance, you stop fearing isolation. And when you stop fearing isolation, you start making decisions based on purpose instead of fear. And when your decisions align with purpose, elevation is inevitable. Let's go deeper. The reason chosen ones suffer so deeply before rising is because people sense their potential long before they do. Energy doesn't lie. When people see someone destined for greatness, they either support it or suppress it. Weak people suppress, strong people support, and you were surrounded by many who were intimidated by your potential. They weren't afraid of who you were. They were afraid of who you would become once you stopped needing them. They weren't afraid of losing you. They were afraid of losing the version of you that needed their approval. And when you rose, when you elevated, when your soul finally aligned with your destiny, their fears came true. Because you stopped shrinking to be chosen. You stopped quieting yourself to be accepted. You stopped breaking yourself into small, manageable pieces so others wouldn't feel threatened. You stopped chasing acceptance, and acceptance lost its grip on you forever. Now your power is undeniable, your glow is unfiltered, your voice is unchained, your energy is sovereign. And this new version of you, this version terrifies those who depended on your uncertainty. But don't shrink, don't dim, don't fold, don't apologize. This is your true state. This is your destined frequency. This is your natural power without the weight of people-pleasing. Freedom is not found in acceptance. Freedom is found in authenticity, and you, chosen one, are finally free.